Ahmad Rashad, longtime host of NBA Inside Stuff. Ahmad, it has been a long time, and you look like you've aged about 10 minutes. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fantastic, Mike. Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you as well. Every question I was going to ask you jumped out of my head when I saw that clip there, and I wonder, because you know Michael so well, like that moment where they're telling him, you can't play, it's too dangerous, and he's saying, why are you focusing on the negative? I mean, you know the man so well. What do you hear when you hear him in that moment there?
You know, that's him. He is the most confident person that you will ever see, and never thinks of the negative. It's always about the positive, about everything. But I think it's because that's the way he runs his life. I mean, I don't think enough was said about the way he prepared to play the game. This guy, I'm telling you, he put the work in, and that's where all that confidence came from. And that's just the sort of way it is with him all the time.
And he demanded that from people around him. And I've seen these quotes where Michael apparently has said he's afraid that people will perceive him differently after they see the film. And the thought that brings to my head is when you're pushing everyone around you, when you expect basically the ultimate from yourself every day and you expect that from everyone around you, it helps you be successful. But maybe it doesn't, from the outside, it doesn't look exactly the way it feels from the inside. What did you hear when you heard him say he's worried that people will see him differently after they see the film?
Well, I think that most people nowadays, people can get in a locker room. Back in the day, the locker rooms were sacred, and things that happened in a locker room sort of stayed in a locker room. And basketball, unlike any other sport, there's only 12 or 13 guys that are there for 6 months together, day in, day out. Now, when you're a leader, you demand everybody else to at least put in the work that you're putting in. Be as committed to it as you are. Now, on a football team, the impact is a little different. You got 60 guys. On a basketball team, there's 12 guys, 15 guys that are together day in, day out. So for somebody to sort of look inside of that, it's a family. It's a family, and things happen in family. There's fights. People say things to other people, and it's one of those things that it doesn't split them apart, but the things that you don't see. You don't see because you're outside that locker room. If you look at the Bulls, and as you look at this whole last dance thing, I think the thing Michael was worried about, that people might take things out of context. But that's kind of the way it is in sports. There's something, you might say something to somebody that, you know, might sound a little harsh from the outside, but inside it's tough love. It's tough love, and this is the way we're going to do it to try to find our way to a championship. And he was a master at that. I think people will see that, you know, that he led by example, and he did not mince words. You know, it wasn't like the old, hey, I'm Michael Jordan. It was a tough, I'm Michael Jordan, and we're kicking some ass.
Right. And look, it inarguably worked. I mean, they won basically six consecutive championships in years that he was there the entire time. And all of us who were in Chicago at the time used to call it minimum 8-peat. If he had never gone away, they would have unquestionably kept on winning. So that's interesting. You've become so well known for your television presence. A lot of people probably don't even realize you played in the NFL all those years and were such a good player. So you know what that looks like from the inside. Leaders, there were a lot of leaders who were driven. Was he more so? Was Michael Jordan just more driven than anyone else you've been around in all your time in sports?
I'd have to say Tiger Woods is close, but not as, you know, Michael, there was just no other way. That's the way it was going to go. It was all about winning. I always thought that, you know, it was sort of funny that things that he used to sort of get himself inspired. And it would happen all the time that if he ever ran into another player during the offseason, the guy didn't say it said something a little bit wrong, he used that against the guy the next time he played him. The guy he hit the shot with against Utah, I remember in the offseason, Mike was in the gym and he walked by and he goes, you know, you quit 1 year too soon because I was going to bust your ass. Fast forward. And that's all Michael was talking about throughout the whole series, that he was waiting for this guy. So, you know, it's kind of cool to see that. But when you look at great players, a lot of them are the same way. I'm sure that, you know, Fran Tarkenton was that way. They put pressure on everybody to win, and it's a good pressure. It's not a bad pressure. And if you can't stand that pressure, then you shouldn't be in that situation.
You know, I was around those teams covering them as a very young reporter. My experiences are so much less broad than yours are. You've been around pro sports for such an incredibly long time. When people ask me what those teams were like, I always say there was nothing like it. I've never seen anything quite like it. Again, you've seen so much more than I have. How would you describe what that experience was like, what it was like being around that team in that time?
Phil Jackson was a master motivator. Now, Michael and I have talked about this many times, that he felt like the reason he reached the level that he reached is because he had a coach that challenged him every single day, that got the best out of him. So it was one of those situations where everybody sort of had to realize that they got to get on board here. And they had the best coach for it, too, because he would make sure everybody's included. You know, you win and lose as a team. But if you got a player like Michael Jordan, you got a better chance of winning. But when you put in people like Dennis Rodman, who, by the way, as you watch this series, you will realize that this guy is one of the great competitors of all time. One of the greatest players that I've ever seen. He was a little wacky and did crazy stuff off the court, but once it came to time to play, there was nobody quite like him. Him and Michael were a lot alike once they got on the basketball on the court. They were totally different off the court, but on the court, I'm telling you, it was something to watch Dennis Rodman just do the things that Dennis could do. And Phil Jackson able to handle all of that and put it all together.
No question. And how about the way the public viewed them? Like, we've seen some teams that just become larger than life. This is a terrible analogy, but I'm thinking of like Duke last year with Zion and the way people treated them. Jalen's teams, legendarily, the Fab Five. These are college things. In the NBA, they were like being around the Beatles. Being around them, I thought that when I was just following them around, I felt like I'm in the midst right now of the most famous people in the entire world. Were they just different from other teams you've been around?
Absolutely, Greeny. It was unbelievable. I remember going to games when they play on the road and you get to the hotel, it would be packed with people. They go to the bus to go to the game. They needed security to get from the hotel to the bus, and it was like the Beatles.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.